Listen, the Masnavi begins with a flute, a reed cut from the reed bed, hollowed out, turned into an instrument. And the sound it makes, the sound that opens one of the greatest mystical texts ever written, is not music, it is weeping. Listen to the reed, how it tells a tale, complaining of separations. Ever since I was severed from the reed bed, my lament has caused men and women to moan. This is not metaphor as decoration. This is metaphor as surgery. Rumi is saying you are the reed flute. You were cut from something. You were severed.
You were taken from a place where you belonged, and now you walk through the world hollow, and the wind moves through you, and the sound you make, whether you know it or not, is the sound of longing. Not longing for a person, not longing for a place, longing for the state you came from, the reed bed, the source, the beloved. Rumi called it God. Jung called it the self. You might call it wholeness or home, or the part of you that knows what you are beneath the story you've been telling. But the name doesn't matter. What matters is this. You are walking around with a wound that you did not choose, and that wound is not a mistake. It is the opening through which the divine enters.
Rumi was born in 1207 in what is now Afghanistan. He lived through invasion, migration, exile. He was a scholar, a teacher, a man of learning and religious authority. And then, in 1244, he met Shams of Tabriz, a wandering dervish, a spiritual wildfire, a man who looked at Rumi and saw something Rumi had been hiding even from himself. And everything Rumi thought he knew about God, about love, about the soul, about himself, shattered. For 2 years, Rumi and Shams were inseparable. And then Shams disappeared. Some say he was murdered by Rumi's jealous students. Some say he simply left. But what is certain is this. Rumi spent the rest of his life writing about what that loss opened in him. The Masnavi, the Divan of Shams, thousands of poems, tens of thousands of lines, all of them variations on a single theme. The wound is the place where the light enters you. This is not philosophy as abstract reasoning. This is philosophy as lived experience, as autobiography of the soul. Rumi's central teaching is this: separation is not the opposite of union. Separation is the path to union. The longing you feel is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that you remember. You remember the reed bed. You remember what you came from. And the ache in your chest is not emptiness. It is orientation. It is the soul's compass pointing home. There is a story in the Masnavi about a man who knocks on the door of the beloved. The beloved asks, "Who is there?" The man says, "It is I." The beloved says, "There is no room in this house for you and me," and does not open the door. So the man wanders in the desert for a year, burning, longing, unraveling. And when he returns and knocks again, the beloved asks, "Who is there?" And the man says, "It is you." The door opens. This story is about the dissolution of the separate self. It is about what must die before you can enter the house of union. Most of us spend our lives knocking on doors saying, "It is I. Here I am. Me. My story. My identity. My wounds. My achievements. My needs." And the door stays closed. Not because we are unworthy, but because the I that we present is too small. It is constructed. It is defensive. It is the version of ourselves we have built to survive, to be acceptable, to navigate a world that asked us to be something other than what we are. Rumi is saying that this constructed self, this ego identity, cannot enter the house of the beloved. Not because it is bad, but because it is not real. It is a story you have been telling, and the beloved, which Rumi understood as both God and your own deepest nature, does not recognize stories. It recognizes essence. So the man must wander. He must burn. He must be stripped of everything he thought he was. And when he returns and says, "It is you," he is not lying. He is not performing humility. He has genuinely dissolved the boundary between himself and the source. This is what Rumi means by union. It is not two things coming together. It is the recognition that there was never separation to begin with. The reed flute believes it is separate from the reed bed. It mourns its separation. It makes music from that mourning. But the reed bed is still inside it. The substance of the flute is the substance of the reed bed. The separation is a story the flute is telling itself. You have been telling yourself a story of separation your entire life. You learned it early. You learned that you were here and the world is there.
That you are a self and others are other selves. That love is something you must earn. That belonging is conditional. That who you are must be acceptable to survive. And so you built an identity. You constructed a self that could navigate these conditions. You learned to say, "It is I," and you believed it. But there is something in you that knows better. There is something in you that remembers the reed bed. And that something is what Rumi calls the soul. The soul is not your personality. It is not your thoughts or your emotions or your history. The soul is the part of you that was never cut from the source. It is the part of you that knows union is not something you achieve, but something you remember.
And the longing you feel, the ache that moves through you when you hear certain music or see certain light or touch certain skin, is the soul reminding you. Rumi understood longing as sacred, not as something to overcome, but as something to follow. The longing is the thread that leads you back. It is the scent of home on the wind. It is your soul saying, "You are not where you belong, and I will not let you forget." Most spiritual traditions tell you to transcend desire, to move beyond longing, to find peace in detachment. Rumi says the opposite. He says desire is the engine of transformation. Longing is the force that pulls you toward God. The ache in your chest is not a problem to be solved. It is a homing signal. But here is the paradox. The thing you long for is not outside you. You are not separate from it. The beloved is not waiting for you somewhere else. The beloved is what you are beneath the story of separation. So the longing is not for something you lack. It is for something you have forgotten you are. This is why Rumi says, "What you seek is seeking you." The thing you long for is longing for you. It is calling you home to yourself. This is the reed flute's lament. It mourns its separation from the reed bed, not knowing that it is still the reed bed, just in a different form. The separation is necessary. The cutting is necessary, because the reed had to be cut to become a flute. It had to be hollowed out. It had to be made empty. And it is that emptiness, that wound, that allows it to sing. If the reed had never been cut, it would still be in the reed bed, silent, undifferentiated, unaware of itself. The cutting is what gives it voice. The wound is what makes the music possible. You were cut too. You were severed from the state of undifferentiated wholeness you came from. And that severing is what gave you consciousness. It is what gave you a self. It is what made you capable of longing, of searching, of asking the question, "Who am I?" The wound is not a mistake. The separation is not a punishment. It is the structure of your becoming. You had to leave home to know what home was. You had to forget union to long for it. You had to build an ego to have something to dissolve. Rumi is not asking you to deny the wound. He is asking you to understand what it is for. The wound is the place where the light enters you.
It is the crack through which grace pours in. It is the opening through which transformation becomes possible. If you were not wounded, you would not be searching. If you were not searching, you would not find. If you did not find, you would not become. This is the first movement of Rumi's philosophy, the recognition of separation as necessary, as sacred, as the beginning of the journey home. The reed flute does not need to return to the reed bed. It needs to realize that it never left. The music it makes is the reed bed singing through it. The longing it feels is the reed bed calling itself home. You are the reed flute, and the song you are singing, whether you know it or not, is the song of return.
Rumi has a poem that has become almost too famous, quoted so often it has lost some of its danger. It is called The Guest House. You have probably heard it. It goes like this. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. On the surface, this sounds like gentle advice about emotional acceptance. Be kind to your feelings. Don't resist what arises. Let everything pass through you. And yes, that is part of it, but Rumi is saying something more radical than that. He is saying that your emotions are not yours. They are guests. They are visitors from somewhere else, and they have come to teach you something.
Most of us treat our emotions as personal property. This is my sadness. This is my anger. This is my joy. We identify with them. We build stories around them. We let them define us. Rumi is saying no. Emotions are energies that move through you. They are not you. They are messages from the unconscious, from the soul, from the parts of you that know things your conscious mind has not yet realized. And if you welcome them, if you listen to them, they will tell you what you need to know. But here is the deeper teaching. Rumi is not asking you to welcome your emotions because it will make you feel better. He is asking you to welcome them because they are doing the work of transformation. Every emotion that arises in you is breaking something open. It is clearing something out. It is preparing you for what comes next. The guest house is not a passive space. It is an alchemical chamber. The guests are not just visiting. They are dismantling the furniture.
There's a story in the Masnavi about a man who is terrified of emotion. He is a rational man, a logical man, a man who prides himself on control. And one day, a wild emotion arises in him, something he cannot name or understand. It feels like grief, but also like rage, but also like longing. It feels like it will consume him. So he runs. He tries to distract himself, to busy himself, to think his way out of it. But the emotion follows him. It grows stronger. It fills his house. It fills his mind. And finally, exhausted, he stops running. He sits down. He says, "Okay, I am here. What do you want from me?" And the emotion speaks. It says, "I am here because you have been refusing to feel me for 20 years. I am here because there is something you need to know about yourself, and you have been too afraid to look. I am here because the life you are living is not the life your soul chose, and I am the signal. I am the alarm. I am the part of you that will not let you forget." And the man weeps, not because the emotion is painful, but because it is true. He has been living a half-life. He has been performing a version of himself that is acceptable, manageable, safe. And the emotion that terrified him was not trying to destroy him. It was trying to set him free. This is what Rumi means when he says to welcome the guests. He is not asking you to enjoy your pain. He is asking you to listen to it. Because your pain is not random. It is not punishment. It is information. It is your soul's way of saying, something here is not aligned. Something here is not true. Pay attention.
Most of us treat emotional pain as an enemy. We medicate it, avoid it, numb it, distract ourselves from it. Rumi says that is exactly the wrong response. He says emotional pain is a guide. It is showing you where the work is. It is showing you what needs to change. But the alchemy does not stop there. Rumi also says, welcome even the dark thought, the shame, the malice. This is where the teaching becomes truly dangerous, because Rumi is not just talking about sadness or grief or loneliness, emotions we can intellectualize as noble or meaningful. He is talking about the parts of you that you are ashamed of, the rage, the jealousy, the pettiness, the cruelty, the fantasies of revenge, the thoughts you would never admit to anyone, not even yourself. Rumi says welcome them too, not because they are good, but because they are real. And if you do not welcome them, they will run your life from the shadows. Jung called this the shadow, the parts of yourself you disown, repress, refuse to acknowledge. Rumi calls them guests. Both are saying the same thing. What you refuse to face does not disappear. It goes underground. It becomes unconscious. And from the unconscious, it controls you. It leaks out in passive aggression, in projection, in self-sabotage, in sudden explosions of emotion you cannot explain. The only way to integrate the shadow is to welcome it, to say, yes, this is also me. This rage is also me. This jealousy is also me. This cruelty is also me. Not to act on it, but to acknowledge it, to let it have a seat at the table. There is a story in the Masnavi about a man who is haunted by a demon. The demon appears to him at night, whispering terrible things. It tells him he is worthless. It tells him he is unlovable. It tells him he will never be free. The man tries everything to banish the demon. He prays, he fasts, he recites scripture, but the demon only grows stronger. Finally, exhausted, the man says to the demon, "Why are you here? What do you want from me?" And the demon says, "I am not here to torment you. I am here because you refuse to see what I am showing you. I am the part of you that knows you are living a lie. I am the part of you that will not let you pretend anymore. You think I am your enemy, but I am your teacher." And the man realizes that the demon is not external, it is internal. It is the voice of his own unlived life, his own repressed truth, his own disowned rage and grief and longing. And the moment he stops fighting it, the moment he stops trying to banish it, it transforms. It is no longer a demon. It is a guide. It is showing him the way home to himself. This is the alchemy Rumi is describing. The guest house is not a place where you passively tolerate your emotions. It is a place where you transform them by welcoming them, by giving them space, by listening to what they have come to teach you. And in that welcoming, something shifts. The emotion that felt like it would destroy you becomes the thing that sets you free. The shame that felt like it would swallow you becomes the doorway to compassion. The rage that felt like it would consume you becomes the fire that burns away everything false. Rumi understood emotion as energy, not as meaning, but as movement. Emotion is not something to be analyzed or understood. It is something to be felt, to be moved through, to be allowed to pass. The problem is not that you feel too much. The problem is that you do not let yourself feel enough. You stop the emotion halfway. You intellectualize it, distract yourself from it, numb it, push it away, and so it gets stuck. It becomes a knot in your body, a tightness in your chest, a chronic tension you carry for years without knowing why.
Rumi's teaching is this: let the emotion complete itself. Let it move all the way through you. If you need to weep, weep until you are empty. If you need to rage, rage until the fire burns out. If you need to grieve, grieve until there is nothing left to grieve. Do not stop it, do not manage it, Do not try to make it reasonable or acceptable. Let it be what it is. Let it do what it came to do, and when it is finished, it will leave. Not because you banished it, but because it completed its work. This is why Rumi says, be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Every emotion is a messenger. Every feeling is a teacher. Even the ones that hurt, even the ones that terrify you, even the ones you are ashamed of. They have come to show you something about yourself that you have been refusing to see. And if you welcome them, if you let them speak, they will tell you what you need to know to become whole.
The guest house is not about being nice to your emotions. It is about recognizing that your emotions are doing the work of transformation, whether you cooperate or not. You can resist them, and they will dismantle you slowly, painfully, over years. Or you can welcome them, and they will dismantle you quickly, cleanly, completely. Either way, the dismantling happens. Rumi is saying you might as well participate, because here is what Rumi knows that most of us forget. You are not trying to fix yourself. You are trying to become yourself. And becoming yourself requires the destruction of everything you are not. The false self, the constructed self, the self you built to survive. That self must die, and your emotions are the fire that burns it away. The grief burns away the pretending, the rage burns away the compliance, the longing burns away the settling, the shame burns away the hiding. Every emotion is a purification. Every feeling is a death and a birth. Rumi calls this process fana, annihilation, the dissolution of the separate self, the burning away of everything that is not essential. And it is not a single moment, it is a continuous process. Every day, something in you dies. Every day, something in you is born. The guest house is never empty. The visitors keep coming, and each one is an invitation to let go of something you are clinging to release something you are holding, to become more of what you actually are and less of what you think you should be. This is the second movement of Rumi's philosophy, the recognition that your emotions are not obstacles to transformation, but the mechanism of transformation itself. The wound is not something to heal in the sense of closing it up and moving on. The wound is something to enter, to explore, to let speak, because inside the wound is everything you need to know about yourself. Inside the wound is the truth you have been avoiding. Inside the wound is the path home. Rumi has another image that appears throughout his poetry, the tavern. But this is not a place where you go to relax or socialize or escape. This is the tavern of ruin, the tavern where you go to be destroyed, where you go to lose yourself, where you go to die. In the tavern of ruin, the wine is different. It does not make you merry, it makes you vanish. The cupbearer does not serve you to make you happy, he serves you to make you nobody. This is not metaphor for drunkenness, this is metaphor for ego death, for the dissolution of the separate self, for the moment when everything you thought you were falls away and you discover what you are beneath the story. Most of us spend our lives building an identity. I am this kind of person. I have these values. I do these things. I believe these ideas. We construct a self out of preferences and memories and roles and relationships, and we defend that self. We protect it. We insist on it, because we believe that self is who we are. Rumi says, no, that self is not who you are. That self is a costume you are wearing. And the tavern of ruin is where you take the costume off, where you let it burn, where you discover that underneath the costume, you are nothing, and that nothing is everything. There is a story in the Masnavi about a man who is terrified of death. He spends his whole life avoiding it, preparing for it, trying to delay it.
He eats carefully, he exercises, he saves money, he builds a fortress of security around himself. And then one day, death appears to him, not as a skeleton or a reaper, but as a friend. Death says, "Why are you afraid of me? I am not your enemy. I am your liberation. You have been living in a prison your entire life, and you think it is safety. But it is not safety. It is confinement, and I am here to set you free." And the man says, "But if I die, I will lose everything. I will lose my life, my relationships, my identity, everything I have built." And death says, "You will lose nothing that is real. You will only lose what was never yours to begin with. Your body was always temporary. Your roles were always conditional. Your identity was always a story. What you will lose is the illusion, and what you will gain is what you actually are."
This is what Rumi means by the tavern of ruin. It is the place where you go to die before you die, to experience ego death while you are still alive, to let go of the constructed self and discover what remains. And what remains, Rumi says, is the beloved. What remains is God. What remains is the self that was always there beneath the story, the essence that was never constructed and therefore can never be destroyed. But here is the paradox. You cannot go to the tavern of ruin intentionally. You cannot decide to have ego death. You cannot make it happen through effort or discipline or spiritual practice. The tavern finds you. The dissolution happens to you. It happens when life breaks you open, when loss shatters you, when suffering strips you of everything you were holding, when the story you have been telling about yourself collapses and you are left with nothing but the raw fact of existence. This is why Rumi says, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." The breaking is not a mistake. The shattering is not a punishment. It is the mechanism of awakening. You cannot wake up while you are still inside the dream of the separate self. The dream has to end, the self has to dissolve, and it dissolves through suffering, through loss, through the kind of pain that cannot be managed or controlled or explained away. Most spiritual traditions tell you to avoid suffering, to transcend it, to rise above it. Rumi says the opposite. He says suffering is the doorway. Suffering is the fire that burns away the false self. Suffering is the wine that makes you vanish. Not all suffering, not random suffering, but the suffering that comes from being alive, from loving, from losing, from caring about things that are temporary. That suffering is sacred. It is doing the work of transformation, whether you understand it or not. There is a story in the Masnavi about a man who loses everything: his wealth, his status, his family, his health. He is left with nothing, and in his despair he cries out to God, "Why have you done this to me? What did I do to deserve this?" And God says, "I did not take anything from you. I removed the things that were in the way. You thought your wealth was you. You thought your status was you. You thought your family was you. But none of those things are you. They are things you had, and I removed them so you could see what you are without them, so you could discover the part of you that cannot be lost." And the man says, "But I am nothing without those things. I am nobody." And God says, "Exactly. Now you are ready. Because nobody is what you have to become before you can discover who you actually are. As long as you are somebody, as long as you have an identity to defend, a story to tell, a role to play, you are still inside the dream. You are still identified with the false self, and the false self has to die before the true self can emerge." This is what Rumi calls fana, annihilation, and it is not a single moment, it is a process, a series of deaths and births. Every time you lose something you thought was essential to who you are, you die a little.
Every time you are broken open by grief or longing or love, you die a little. Every time you are forced to let go of a story you have been telling about yourself, you die a little. And each of these deaths is a step deeper into the truth of what you are.
Rumi understood that the ego is not your enemy. It is necessary. It is the structure that allows you to function in the world, to have relationships, to make decisions, to survive. But it is not who you are. It is a tool. And the problem is that most of us identify with the tool. We think the ego is the self. We think the story is the truth. And so we spend our lives defending the ego, protecting it, trying to make it bigger, better, more successful, more loved. We think that if we can just get the ego right, if we can just build the perfect identity, we will finally be happy. But Rumi says you will never be happy as long as you are identified with the ego, because the ego is a fiction. It is a construct. It is a story you are telling yourself about yourself. And no matter how good the story is, it is still a story. It is still separate from what you actually are. So the happiness you are seeking cannot be found in the ego. It can only be found in what remains when the ego dissolves, in the nothing that is everything, in the nobody that is the beloved.
This is why Rumi says, do not be satisfied with stories, how things have gone with others. Unfold your own myth. He's not telling you to create a better story about yourself. He is telling you to stop telling stories altogether, to let the myth unfold, not as a narrative you construct, but as a reality you uncover. Your myth is not something you invent. It is something you were living. It is the pattern of your becoming. And you cannot see it while you are still inside the story of who you think you are. The tavern of ruin is where the story ends, where the identity collapses, where the separate self dissolves. And it is terrifying, because you think that if you lose the story, you will lose yourself. You think that if the ego dies, you will disappear. But Rumi says the opposite happens. When the ego dies, you finally appear. When the story ends, the truth begins. When the separate self dissolves, the self that was always there, the self that is not separate from anything, emerges. And that self, Rumi says, is the beloved. It is not something you find, it is what you are. It is not something you become, it is what you have always been. The journey is not toward the beloved. The journey is the realization that you and the beloved are not two, that the one who is seeking and the one who is sought are the same, that the reed flute and the reed bed are one substance, that the lover and the loved are one being. This is the third movement of Rumi's philosophy, the recognition that the separate self must die for the true self to emerge, that the story must end for the truth to begin, that the tavern of ruin is not a place of destruction, but a place of revelation. You go there to lose yourself, and in losing yourself, you find what you actually are. Rumi was a mystic, which means he understood that there is a dimension of reality that cannot be spoken, a layer of experience that exists beneath language, beneath thought, beneath the mind's need to categorize and explain. He called this dimension sohbet, the silent conversation, the communion that happens when two beings meet not through words but through presence, not through ideas but through essence. There is a story in the Masnavi about two friends who have not seen each other in years. When they finally reunite, they embrace and sit in silence. They do not speak. They do not ask questions. They do not exchange news or catch up on events. They simply sit together, breathing, present, alive. And after hours of silence, one of them says, "This has been the most profound conversation of my life." Because they were not speaking with words. They were speaking with their souls. And the soul has its own language, a language that the mind cannot translate. Most of us live entirely in the realm of language. We think in words. We communicate through sentences. We believe that if we can name something, explain it, analyze it, we understand it. But Rumi is saying there are experiences that cannot be captured in language, truths that cannot be spoken, realities that can only be known through direct experience. And the soul speaks in this language of experience, not in the language of the mind.
This is why Rumi's poetry is so paradoxical, so contradictory, so frustrating to the rational mind. He will say one thing in one poem and the opposite in another. He will describe the beloved as distant and then as close, as hidden and then as revealed, as outside and then as inside. He will speak of union and then of separation, of presence and then of absence, of being and then of non-being. And this is not because he is confused. It is because he is trying to point towards something that cannot be said directly. He is trying to use language to gesture beyond language. Jung understood this too. He said the unconscious speaks in symbols, in images, in dreams. It does not think in concepts. It does not argue or explain. It shows, it reveals, it presents. And if you try to reduce those symbols to rational meanings, you miss the point. The symbol is not a code to be deciphered. The symbol is a doorway to be entered. You have to let it work on you. You have to sit with it, feel it, let it move through you. And then, if you are lucky, you will understand. Not with your mind, but with something deeper.
Rumi calls this deeper understanding marifat, gnosis, direct knowing, not knowledge about something, but knowledge as something, not information, but transformation. You do not learn marifat from books or teachers. You learn it from experience, from loss, from love, from the moments when you are broken open and something inside you recognizes what is happening, even though you cannot explain it. That recognition is marifat. That is the soul speaking. There is a story in the Masnavi about a man who goes to a great scholar and asks him to teach him about God. The scholar gives him books to read, concepts to study, arguments to memorize. The man reads everything. He memorizes everything. He can recite the entire theological tradition, but he still does not know God. So he goes to a Sufi master and asks the same question. The master does not give him books. He gives him a task. He tells him to sit in silence for 40 days. No reading, no thinking, no talking, just silence.
And the man does it. And on the 40th day, he stands up and says, "Now I know." Not because he learned something, but because something in him opened. The silence cleared away the noise of the mind, and what remained was the direct experience of what he had been seeking. This is what Rumi means by sobet. It is not conversation as exchange of information, it is conversation as transmission of being. It is what happens when two people meet at the level of essence rather than personality. When they drop the masks, the roles, the stories, and simply sit together in the truth of what they are. And in that sitting, something is communicated that has nothing to do with words. A recognition, a resonance, a knowing that you are not alone, that the one sitting across from you is also seeking, also longing, also burning with the same fire you are burning with. Rumi's relationship with Shams of Tabriz was sobet. It was not intellectual, it was not scholarly, it was soul to soul. Shams looked at Rumi and saw past the learned scholar, the respected teacher, the pious Muslim. He saw the longing, he saw the hunger, he saw the part of Rumi that was still burning for God, but had learned to hide it beneath respectability. And Rumi looked at Shams and saw freedom. He saw wildness. He saw someone who was not performing spirituality, but living it. And in that mutual recognition, something opened in both of them. A door that had been closed their entire lives suddenly swung open. This is why Rumi's poetry after Shams is so different from his scholarship before Shams. Before Shams, Rumi was a master of language, of theology, of religious law. He could explain God, he could teach about God, but he did not know God directly. And then Shams came, and something in Rumi broke open. Not his mind, but his heart. Not his intellect, but his soul. And suddenly he was not writing about God, he was writing from God. The poems were not explanations, they were outpourings. They were the overflow of an experience that could not be contained. This is the language of the soul. It does not argue. It does not persuade. It does not try to convince you of anything. It simply speaks its truth and trusts that if you are ready, you will hear, and if you are not ready, you will not. There is no force, no manipulation, no strategy. The soul does not care about your agreement or your approval. It only cares about its own integrity, about speaking what is true, even if no one understands. Rumi understood that most of what we call communication is not communication at all. It is performance. It is strategy. It is the ego trying to manage how it is perceived, trying to control the narrative, trying to maintain the story. We speak to impress, to defend, to justify, to explain ourselves. We speak to be liked, to be admired, to be understood. And all of that is the ego speaking. The soul does not need to be liked. It does not need to be understood. It simply needs to be expressed. There is a story in the Masnavi about a man who is a brilliant speaker. He can persuade anyone of anything. He can make black seem white and white seem black. He is famous for his eloquence, for his intelligence, for his rhetorical skill. But one day, he meets a silent dervish who just looks at him. And in that look, the man feels something he has never felt before. He feels seen. Not his performance, not his skill, not his intelligence, but himself. The part of him that is beneath all the words, beneath all the cleverness, beneath all the performing. And he realizes that his entire life has been noise. He has been speaking constantly, but he has never said anything true. He has been filling the silence because he is terrified of what the silence might reveal. And the dervish says nothing. He just looks. And in that silence, the man hears what he has been avoiding his entire life. The truth of what he is. Not the story he has been telling, but the reality beneath the story. And it breaks him open. He falls to his knees. He weeps. And when he finally stands up, he does not speak anymore. Not because he has nothing to say, but because he has discovered a language that is deeper than words.
This is what Rumi is inviting you into. Not more words, not more explanations, not more concepts about God or the soul or enlightenment, but the direct experience, the silent conversation, the communion that happens when you stop performing and start being, when you stop explaining and start feeling, when you stop seeking and start recognizing what has always been here. The soul is not something you have to find. It is what you are. It is not hidden. It is what is looking through your eyes right now. It is what is listening to these words. It is what is beating your heart and breathing your breath and holding you upright in this moment. The soul is not distant. It is immediate. It is not mystical. It is ordinary. It is just that you have learned to ignore it, to override it, to live from the mind instead of from the essence. Rumi's entire teaching is an invitation to return to the soul, not through special practices or complicated techniques, but through presence, through silence, through listening, through the willingness to let the mind quiet and the heart speak.
This is what he means when he says,
Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray. The pull is the soul. The love is the beloved. And they are not two things. They are the same thing, pulling you toward itself. This is the fourth movement of Rumi's philosophy. The recognition that there is a dimension of reality that cannot be spoken, a language of the soul that is deeper than words, a communion that happens in silence. And that dimension is not far away. It is here. It is now. It is what you are beneath the noise of the mind, and that is calling you home in every moment, in every breath, in every beat of your heart. Rumi has an image that appears throughout his work: fire, but not fire as destruction, fire as transformation, fire as purification, fire as the force that burns away everything false and leaves only what is essential. He says, "Set your life on fire. Seek those who fan your flames." This is not a call to recklessness. This is a call to intensity, to living in a way that is not safe, not controlled, not managed, but alive.
Most of us are terrified of fire. We spend our lives trying to avoid it, to contain it, to keep everything cool and manageable and under control. We build lives of comfort, of predictability, of minimal risk. We avoid conflict, avoid intensity, avoid anything that might burn too hot. And in doing so, we also avoid transformation, because transformation requires fire. It requires the heat that melts what has become solid, the flame that burns away what has become stagnant, the intensity that forces everything false to reveal itself. There is a story in the Masnavi about a moth and a flame. The moth is drawn to the flame. It circles it, mesmerized, unable to look away. And the other moths say, "Be careful. If you get too close, you will burn." But the moth does not listen. It flies closer and closer until finally it flies directly into the flame. And it burns. It is consumed completely. And the other moths say, "See, we told you. You should have stayed safe." But the moth, in its final moment, understands something they will never understand. It understands that burning is the point, that the fire is not the enemy, that the only way to truly know the flame is to become the flame.
This is what Rumi means by fana, annihilation. It is not partial, it is not gradual, it is total. You do not dip your toe in the fire, you throw yourself in. You let yourself be consumed. And what burns away is not you. What burns away is everything you thought was you. The false self, the constructed identity, the story, the performance. All of it burns. And what remains, Rumi says, is what was always there beneath the burning, the essence, the soul, the beloved. Most of us want transformation without fire. We want change without pain. We want growth without loss. We want to become ourselves without having to let go of who we have been. And Rumi is saying that is not how it works. Transformation is not addition. It is subtraction. It is not building something new. It is burning away everything false until only the truth remains. And that burning is painful. It is terrifying. It feels like death, because it is death. It is the death of the separate self, the death of the ego, the death of every story you have been telling about who you are.
But here is what Rumi knows that most of us forget. The fire does not consume what is real. It only consumes what is false. Your essence cannot burn. Your soul cannot be destroyed. The part of you that is the beloved cannot be touched by any fire. So when you throw yourself into the flames, when you let yourself be burned away, you are not losing yourself. You are losing everything that was never you to begin with. There's a story in the Masnavi about a piece of raw copper that wants to become gold. It goes to an alchemist and says, "Please turn me into gold." And the alchemist says, "I will, but first you must enter the fire." and the copper is afraid. It says, "But the fire will destroy me. I will melt. I will lose my shape. I will cease to be what I am." And the alchemist says, "Exactly. That is the point. You must stop being copper before you can become gold. You must let go of what you are before you can become what you are meant to be."
And the copper says, "But what if I enter the fire and there is nothing left? What if I burn away completely and there is no gold, only ashes?" And the alchemist says, "Then you were never meant to be gold. But if there is gold in you, the fire will reveal it. The fire does not create the gold is already there. The fire simply burns away everything that is not gold." This is Rumi's understanding of transformation. The fire does not create anything. It reveals what was already there. You are not trying to become something you are not. You are trying to become what you have always been, beneath the layers of conditioning, beneath the masks, beneath the false self. And the fire burns away those layers. It strips away the conditioning. It melts the masks. It destroys the false self. And what remains is the gold, the essence, the truth of what you are. But you cannot enter the fire halfway. You cannot say, "I will burn away this part of myself, but keep that part safe." You cannot negotiate with the fire. You cannot control it. You cannot manage it. You either throw yourself in completely, or you do not enter at all.
And most of us stay at the edge, warming ourselves by the fire, feeling the heat, wanting the transformation, but unwilling to pay the price. We want to keep the ego and lose the suffering. We want to keep the story and lose the pain. We want to keep the identity and lose the limitation. And Rumi is saying that is not possible. You cannot keep the false self and find the true self. You cannot keep the story and discover the truth. You cannot keep the separate self and experience union. So the question Rumi asks is this: are you willing to burn? Are you willing to let everything you think you are fall away? Are you willing to die before you die so that you can discover what cannot die? Most people will say no. Most people will choose safety over fire, comfort over transformation, the known over the unknown. And there is nothing wrong with that. The fire is not for everyone. But if you are reading this, if you are drawn to Rumi, if something in you is hungry for what he is describing, then you are already at the edge of the fire. You are already feeling the heat. And the question is not whether you will burn. The question is whether you will throw yourself in, or whether you will stay at the edge, warming yourself, longing for transformation, but unwilling to pay the price.
Rumi says, set your life on fire. Seek those who fan your flames. He is not telling you to seek safety. He is telling you to seek intensity, to find the people, the places, the experiences that make you burn hotter, the ones that challenge you, the ones that break you open, the ones that refuse to let you stay small, stay safe, stay hidden. Because those are the ones who will help you transform. Those are the ones who will help you become what you are meant to be. Shams was that for Rumi. He was not a teacher in the traditional sense. He did not give Rumi more knowledge. He gave Rumi fire. He looked at Rumi and saw the part of him that was still sleeping, still hiding, still afraid. And he refused to let Rumi stay safe. He provoked him. He challenged him. He pushed him to the edge and then pushed him over. And Rumi burned. He lost his reputation. He lost his students. He lost his social standing. He became an embarrassment to his community, a scandal, a man who had lost his mind. And in losing all of that, he found himself. He found his voice. He found his truth. He found the beloved.
This is what the fire does. It destroys everything that is not essential, everything that is performance, strategy, pretense, everything that is safe and controlled and manageable. And it leaves only what is real, only what is true, only what is you beneath the story. And that is terrifying, because you have spent your entire life building the story. You have invested everything in the identity, and the fire does not care. It burns it all away. It does not ask permission. It does not negotiate. It simply burns. But here is the paradox. The fire is not something that happens to you. The fire is something you are. Rumi is not describing an external force. He is describing an internal process. The fire is your longing. The fire is your desire for God. The fire is the part of you that will not settle, will not compromise, will not accept anything less than the truth. And that fire is always burning. You can ignore it. You can suppress it. You can distract yourself from it. But you cannot extinguish it. It is the life force itself. It is the soul's hunger for union. And it will burn through your entire life until everything false has been consumed and only the truth remains. This is the fifth movement of Rumi's philosophy, the recognition that transformation requires fire, that the fire does not consume what is real, but only what is false, and that you are both the copper and the gold, both the moth and the flame. You are the one who burns and the one who emerges from the burning. And the journey is not about avoiding the fire. It is about entering it fully, completely, without reservation. Because on the other side of the fire is not death, it is life, the life you were always meant to live, the self you were always meant to be, the union you were always meant to discover. We are back where we started. The reed flute, the reed bed, the separation that was never really separation, the journey that was never really a journey. Because here is the final movement of Rumi's philosophy, the teaching that ties everything together. You never left. The reed flute mourns separation from the reed bed, but the reed flute is still made of reed. It has not become something else. It has not lost its essential nature. It has only changed form. And the music it makes is the reed bed singing through it. The separation is a story the flute is telling itself, a perspective, an experience, but not a metaphysical reality. You have been telling yourself a story of separation your entire life. You have been saying, I am here and God is there. I am alone. I am cut off. I am separate. And Rumi is saying that story is not true. You were never cut off. You were never separate. You have always been connected to the source. You have always been one with the beloved. The longing you feel is not evidence of separation. It is evidence of connection. Because you can only long for what you have tasted. You can only miss what you have known. The soul remembers. It remembers the state before separation, the wholeness, the union, and the entire journey of your life, every longing, every seeking, every breaking open, every fire, every death is the soul's attempt to return to that state. But here's the paradox. The soul is not trying to go back to something external. It is trying to recognize what it has always been. The return is not a movement through space. It is a shift in consciousness. It is the moment when you stop believing the story of separation and recognize the truth of union. There is a story in the Masnavi about a man who spends his entire life searching for treasure. He travels to distant lands. He studies ancient maps. He digs in deserts and mountains and caves. He sacrifices everything for this search, his family, his health, his peace. And at the end of his life, exhausted and broken, he gives up. He returns home, and as he is sitting in his own house, a beam of light falls through a crack in the wall and illuminates a stone in the floor.
and he realizes that the treasure has been buried under his house the entire time. He traveled the world searching for what was always right here. This is Rumi's final teaching. The beloved is not distant. The beloved is not hidden. The beloved is what you are. It is the consciousness looking through your eyes. It is the presence that is aware of these words. It is the life force that is breathing you, beating your heart, holding you upright in this moment. You have been searching for it outside yourself because you were taught that it is outside. You were taught that you are separate, that you must earn union, that you must become worthy. But Rumi is saying you were never separate, you were never unworthy. You have always been the beloved searching for itself. This is what he means when he says, what you seek is seeking you. The seeker and the sought are not two. The lover and the loved are not two. The reed flute and the reed bed are not two. They are one reality experiencing itself from different perspectives. And the entire journey is the movement from the perspective of separation to the perspective of union, from the story to the truth, from the illusion to the reality.
Jung called this the process of individuation, the journey from identification with the ego to identification with the self. The ego believes it is separate. It believes it is a distinct entity, isolated, alone. But the self knows better. The self knows it is connected to everything, that it is not a separate self, but a node in the network of consciousness, that it is both individual and universal, both particular and infinite. And the journey of individuation is the process of waking up from the ego's dream of separation and recognizing the self's reality of union. But here is what both Rumi and Jung understood. You cannot force this recognition. You cannot think your way into it. You cannot achieve it through effort or discipline or spiritual practice. The recognition happens when it happens. It happens when the ego has been worn down enough, when the story has collapsed enough, when the fire has burned away enough of the false self that what remains can finally see clearly. And until that moment, all you can do is prepare. All you can do is welcome the guests. All you can do is enter the tavern of ruin. All you can do is throw yourself into the fire. All you can do is keep saying yes to the dismantling, yes to the breaking open, yes to the dying that is also a being born.
Rumi spent the last 25 years of his life writing. After Shams disappeared, after the loss that broke him open completely, Rumi poured out poem after poem, story after story, teaching after teaching. And all of it was the same teaching said in different ways. You are not who you think you are. You are not separate. You are not alone. You are the beloved, and the beloved is you. And the entire journey is the process of remembering that truth. The Masnavi is not a systematic philosophy. It is not a logical argument. It is a series of stories, each one a different angle on the same truth. And the reason Rumi used stories instead of concepts is because stories work on a different level. They bypass the rational mind. They speak to the unconscious. They plant seeds that grow slowly, over time, until one day you realize that the story you read years ago has become your life, that the truth Rumi was describing has become your experience. This is what he means when he says, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself." The journey is not about fixing the world. The journey is not about becoming a better person. The journey is about dissolving the separate self that believes it needs to fix or improve or achieve anything. It is about recognizing that what you are is already whole, already perfect, already union. Not perfect in the sense of flawless, but perfect in the sense of complete. Nothing is missing. Nothing needs to be added. You are already what you are seeking. But you cannot see that from the perspective of the ego. From the ego's perspective, you are incomplete. You are flawed. You are not enough. And so the ego is always striving, always achieving, always trying to become something other than what you are. And Rumi is saying that striving is the problem, that trying to become is what keeps you from being, that the effort to reach the beloved is what keeps you separate from the beloved, because you cannot reach what you already are. You can only recognize it.
There is a story in the Masnavi about a man who is standing in a river dying of thirst. He is surrounded by water, but he does not drink because he is looking for a special kind of water, a pure water, a holy water. And he dies of thirst in the middle of the river because he did not realize that the water he was seeking was already all around him. He did not need to find it. He needed to open his mouth. This is the human condition. You are standing in the middle of God, dying of spiritual thirst because you are looking for God somewhere else. You are surrounded by the beloved, but you do not recognize it because you are looking for something special, something other, something more. And Rumi is saying, stop looking, open your mouth, drink. The beloved is here. The beloved is now. The beloved is what is looking through your eyes and listening through your ears and beating through your heart. This is the final movement of Rumi's philosophy, the recognition that the journey is circular, that the search ends where it began, that the reed flute never left the reed bed. The separation was real as experience, but not real as metaphysics. It was a necessary illusion, a developmental stage, a perspective that had to be lived through before it could be seen through. And now that you have lived through it, now that you have journeyed through the wound and the guest house and the tavern of ruin and the fire, now that you have died and been born and died again, you can finally see what was always true. You are not separate. You were never separate. You are the beloved, and the beloved is you. And the music you make, the life you live, the love you give, is the beloved experiencing itself through you, is the reed bed singing through the reed flute, is the universe becoming conscious of itself in this particular form, in this particular moment, through these particular eyes. And that is not a metaphor. That is not poetry. That is the literal truth of what you are. Rumi's invitation is this: stop believing the story of separation. Stop trying to reach God. Stop seeking union, because you are already union. You are already God experiencing itself as human. You are already the beloved loving itself through this life. And the only thing keeping you from recognizing that is the story you are telling yourself about being separate. So let the story end. Let it burn. Let it dissolve. Let it fall away. And what remains when the story ends is not nothing. What remains is everything. What remains is the truth you have been seeking your entire life. You are not the wave separate from the ocean. You are the ocean waving. You are not the note separate from the symphony. You are the symphony sounding itself as this note. You are not the reed flute separate from the reed bed. You are the reed bed longing for itself, singing itself, returning to itself in every breath. This is what Rumi spent his life saying. This is what every poem was about. This is what every story was pointing toward. Not a distant God to be reached, but a present God to be recognized. Not a future union to be achieved, but a current union to be realized. Not a journey to somewhere else, but a return to here, to now, to what you have always been and can never stop being. The reed flute's lament is over, not because the longing has ended,
but because the longing has been recognized as the voice of union itself. The wound is still there, but it is no longer a problem. It is a portal. The fire is still burning, but it is no longer destructive. It is transformative. The guest house is still receiving visitors, but they are no longer strangers. They are recognized as aspects of the one beloved, arriving in different forms, teaching different lessons, all of them part of the great conversation that is consciousness exploring itself. You are the reed flute. You are the reed bed. You are the music. You are the musician. You are the listener. You are all of it. And the separation you have been mourning was never real. It was a dream you were having. And now, if you are willing, you can wake up. Not to a different world, but to this world seen clearly. Not to a different self, but to this self recognized truly. Not to union somewhere else, but to union right here, right now, in this breath, in this moment, in this body, in this life.
This is Rumi's gift, not a philosophy to believe, but an experience to enter, not a teaching to memorize, but a truth to become. And the becoming is not future, it is now. It is always now. It has always been now. And now is where the beloved has always been, waiting for you to stop looking and finally see you are already home. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the doorsill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep.